Okay, let's get going. It seems like the numbers are starting to slowly stabilize, and it's 8:01, so I think let's get going. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you might be. Appreciate your time being with us for this TBC Power Hour, Back to Basics Takeoff. This is May the 28th, and myself, Albert Willifee, Technical Product Manager here today, and joining me is Scott Bridges, Digital Construction Professional. Just a few housekeeping items. Please, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please use the Q&A. You'll see on your little Zoom bar at the bottom, there is a Q&A section. So if you can please use that and not the chat. The chat is not recorded, so we can't get to you afterwards. So we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. But if there's not enough time, we do get a list of all your questions afterwards and we can reach out. So please use that Q&A section for any of the questions. Other than that, Scott, I'll hand it over to you, and everybody that joined us for last month Power Hour would know Scott. Scott, it's all yours. Go ahead and take it on.
Sure. Thank you, Albert. Appreciate it. And yes, good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, evening. Thank you all for your valuable time and interest in Business Center for doing takeoffs. Kind of my favorite part of just the construction world is the bidding side and the earthwork side. I've worked with this my entire career, pretty much starting back with digitizers 30 years ago. So quite a long time. What we're going to see what we can squeeze in the next 45 minutes or so is just a quick overview of some of the basics of Business Center. And really just today thinking about it, I'm going to start with a little bit, just a short blurb on how we kind of fail. What can we do wrong? And then we're going to move into what I see as best practices in the marketplace out there. We're going to talk about the templates and ribbons and try to squeeze in 3 working samples of PDF data to start with. If all you have is basic rastered PDF, how do you manage and work with that data? How do you extract data from vector PDFs? And if you do get multiple CAD files. So that's what we're going to sprint through this morning. And thank you for your time. And we'll jump right into it. So let me minimize this. And what we're going to do is start at the very beginning here in Business Center. For those that are very new to Business Center, if you see Business Center out of the box, there's lots of settings, lots of menus. The secret and power to Business Center to me is it's extremely customizable. So it's not complicated, it's customizable depending on what you want to try to do. So let me just take a minute or two and show you kind of how you can fail at Business Center from poor practices really. So if you want to do earthwork takeoffs, let's just start at the very beginning and I'll go File, New, and out of the box of Business Center, you've got several templates. Here's one, US survey foot or blank. We'll just open this one up right here. So if we open up a sample template to start with out of Business Center, you get a blank screen. Navigating around Business Center, there's some tools at the bottom where you can change your screen from black to white at the very bottom. You can also turn your grid on and off, and several more choices right here that you can work with. So besides that, what we're going to do is move into, let's say we started a brand new job and we've got it right here, File, New. We've got, this is our settings. We're going to do the US survey foot and everything. We do the blank screen. Okay, here we are. How would we start at the very beginning? There's usually about 2 ways to do everything in Business Center. One is you can use the import option in the upper right. So we'll go to takeoff, we'll use our import, and you can browse for data. The upper right corner is your browse choice in the import box. You've got your browsing choice right here. And below that, you can navigate to a file. One tip at the very, very beginning here is at the very bottom right, there's a double caret. Let's open that up to make sure we're pulling in at least 300 resolution. If you don't change this from an importing standpoint, it would be 150 and your file would be pretty grainy. We'll go up to 300, we'll say import, and it'll pull in a PDF. If it's multiple pages of PDF in that same spot, you can select what pages you like. Just like printing, if you want 1-3, if you want 1,5,10, you can pick the sheets that you would like to bring in. So here we are, we brought a PDF in. The items that you do with every takeoff include importing, scaling, and checking. And one thing I'll show early on here is I've compiled this information into a document. If anybody would like it, you may feel free to reach out and ask for this. It's sample files, it's the sample data set. But let's talk about what takeoff is in a concise summary right here. And really from a takeoff world, you're going to do about 5 steps. They're listed right here. Really, you're going to import your data, whether you import a PDF file that's just rastered, whether you bring in a vectored PDF file, or you bring in CAD data. So you're going to go through and import data. Once you've got that data imported and scaled, really there's 2 big buckets that are next in the list right here. And they're right here. You're going to go through and separate, either you digitize or you standardize your data, and you're going to have one bucket that's your existing data, one bucket that's your design data. So, and you could treat those as surfaces, layers. We'll get into that in a few moments here. But you're going to take your data, separate it from existing to design, and then the name of the game, really the secret of the whole process, is you need to turn your data from 2D to 3D. That's what we're trying to get to. 2D data, turn it into 3D data. Once our data is 3D for existing in the design, then we're going to put in our subgrade information. We'll go through and add site improvements. We'll go through and put in our thicknesses, and then we create our volumes and subgrades. So that is really the short version of how we can do all this. And again, this document is completely available if you would like to look at it with videos as well. So here's what we could do. We could import. We're going to scale this, and I'm going to put in 40 feet. The 40 feet is located from corner. And here's a little hint on, do I have rastered or vectored data? When you get to the corner of something, if it gives you a marker for that, then you probably have some vector data associated with it. If you don't get a snapping tool, then you just have pure raster data to work with. So I'm going to click this corner and this corner. So we've imported, we picked our distance, we scale it, and then we would always check it. So right here's a measure option. We'll come in here and I'll pick a parking stall and just basically check a parking stall right here. And I've got a 10-foot distance. So we've imported, we've scaled and checked. Again, we're going through worst case scenario for just a minute, because if you bring this in and you haven't set up templates and settings in Business Center, you'll notice that as we pop over here to our layers, we have no layers preset. There's just 0 and drill and point. So this would be a poor methodology of doing it, because now I need to put in, under takeoff, I would need to put in contours, and I would need to come up with what layers. So you would see at the very beginning, I would say, boy, how do I want to do this today? Do I want existing contours? Do I want original ground? Do I want EG, OG? There's a lot of ways we could do it. So you're much better using Business Center, setting up templates and ribbons. By doing that, everything is the same and consistent every time. So instead of guessing and going in and building a new layer, let's start from a template. So a template that I have created for takeoff is, we'll do File New, and I've created this template called Construction. So by using the Construction template, as we open it up, now we have our layers and groups of layers already preset. So we have, every time we do this, we're going to have existing data. This is going to be existing contours. We'll do design contours. You don't have to guess what the layers are going to be. So having a template is much better. The other part, besides the template, is setting up your ribbon, because you see there's a lot of choices across the top right here. Do I want to go under takeoff? Do I need to be under surfaces? Do I need to be under CAD? I've got a lot of places to go, but you can right click and you can customize this ribbon. So if you right click and go to customize, you can import some settings. So right here, we'll go through and I'll import a template ribbon. So if I go to do that and pick this ribbon and select it, we'll pick that and we'll say, okay. And you notice immediately my entire interface has changed. So by changing the interface, we just have takeoff and data prep and some very basic tools right here. These are the tools that we need for our earthwork takeoff for a site job. We shouldn't have to go into any other menus right here. So it really gives you a cleaner interface. Just focus on what you're trying to do. by having a template. So again, those are three areas of Business Center to customize. One is you can customize your layers and your settings and your template. The other part is your ribbon right here at the beginning. So when you go File, New, all this is preset for you and you're ready to go. So now with this set, let's go through that same exercise again. Let's go pull in that same PDF. I'm going to go import a PDF again. This time, we know what layers we would like. So we're going to do a known distance. We're going to import. If it's, again, if you've got multiple sheets, you pick the right sheet that you would like. I want to pick 40, and we're going to put our distance in. So we're going to walk through this one twice and show several different things at the very beginning. So we import it, we scale it, and we always check it. So here, I'll pick some parking stalls, and I'll check here to here. And there's my 10 feet again. So we've imported, scaled it, and checked it. Okay, what would we do at the very beginning if all we had was a raster PDF? Nothing that we can extract the data from, and we just have to do on-screen digitizing. Everything we shouldn't need to do is sitting right here under this takeoff menu. I'm just going to put in a few of the existing lines to let you see this workflow, and then we'll move ahead. Another place you can look at the beginning if you want to know, is this a raster or vectored? Once you've imported your data, if you look under Project Explorer, two ways to get around a Business Center. There's a View Filter and Project Explorer in the lower left. If you don't have access to those, they're in the Quick Command menu at the top. They're sitting right at the top under View Filter and Project Explorer. So these two at the top are the same two that I've got open on the side. Here we're going to look at our imported, and here's the PDF that we've imported. Inside of the PDF icon and the image right here, there is a V. V actually means vectored, so there is data that we can extract and work from, and we'll do that here in just a little bit, but that gives you the understanding. If there's no V, then it is just a rastered image only. So how would we go through and do our basic digitizing having a template preset? We'll go to the takeoff menu. We're going to put in contours right here. So in contours, we're going to put them on existing contours first. We'll just do a few to explain the concept. How do you navigate? What layers or what elevations do you pick? You look at the screen and, okay, am I kind of going up or down? Either way is fine. In this job, we're starting out at 38.18.5, and we're moving over. So the first number that I may want to pick is 38.18. I can put in a current elevation. I can pick what my contour interval is. In this particular case, it is a 0.5. And to activate, to do your digitizing, all I need to do is activate the digitizer box on the right side of the screen. Right here, if you see my crosshairs, there's a digitized box. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 38.18. So I can just click, and on the screen, this will highlight for me. This is worst case scenario if I do not have any other data. If I don't have vector data, if I don't have any CAD data, what you would do is on screen do this digitizing. Now you've got a few options, and I want to camp out here for just a minute on some of these choices. You would go through and zoom in, and you would click this data. This is time versus accuracy. I could zoom in and click many locations along this if I wanted to, or if I was just trying to get it in very quickly, I could zoom out a little bit and sketch this out. As you get near the edge of your screen, it will automatically pan over for you, so you don't have to do that. The way you navigate with your mouse in Business Center is you wheel forward to zoom in, you wheel back to zoom out, you hold down the right click to pan. So those are a couple of basic features. When I get to the end of the contour, I'll hit the enter button. Now I'm ready for the next one, 38.18.5. If I see that location, I can come right here and put in the next value. So we'll put the next one in. I hit the enter button. We're ready for 38.19. If the number is different and I want to put a different factor in, such right here, I want to put in 38.17.5, I'm going to just move this over. I don't have to retype the number every time. I just change this to what I need. I need 38.17.5. Where is the next point located? We just click on here, and again, you can zoom in and zoom out. Another couple of features to show while we're here in the basics of this is, again, zoom in, zoom out, pan. But once I've got this close, Here's another feature within Business Center. If I get near the edge and I can enter it to close the line. If I just hit enter to close it, or you can right click. If I right click, it brings up multiple options that I can work with here. One of those is I would like to snap. I would like to snap to the end of a line, the middle of a line, a point, a segment, somewhere else. I can click exactly to the end and click the end of that. So now we've got a very clean line that we've created. So that's digitizing rastered imagery on your screen. You would just go through and do this. One more tool that's available when you're doing this, you can also, everything's got properties and settings inside of it. If I go to this image and right click and look at the properties of this image, so I take this PDF and I right click and I go into properties. There's a few properties that are down in here, such as render settings. One of those is how do I physically want to look at this image? I can actually change it to a blue lined image where it actually flips it almost like blueprint days, or I could invert it, black to white, white to black. And you can also change it to a dimmed image if you don't want the bright screen the entire time. So those are a couple of settings that you can go in there and change in TBC, is change those settings right there. So that we would continue on and digitize all the existing the exact same way by using the data takeoff and going into contours and putting in all the existing and all the design. That's if it was a manual process start to finish. But let's look at the exact same data and let's extract data and see how quickly we can walk through this particular set of information here. So we'll go File, New, use the exact same template. So this way we don't have to create our layers. We don't have to put in existing and design. All those layers are preset in our template and the ribbon is as well. So here we are with a new screen. I'm going to move over one of my little sharing icons here. So make sure it's out of the way while I'm working. Okay, so we're going to do the import again. This time we'll pick the same PDF and we'll import it. We import it, we would scale it, right? We'll use this. If I have multiple ways to scale, I can not only use a known scale bar, but if we have a known distance, that is my preferred. If I have a property line, if I have the length of a building side, I will use a known distance. We can also use known coordinates. So if I have a northing and easting, I can use that information as well from a northing and easting. So we've scaled it, we'll compute it, and then we will check it. So we'll go through and do one last check on this to make sure we've got the right information. And there's our distance right here. Okay, so instead of going through and using takeoff and contours, this time we're going to look at that data and we're going to see there's a V here. Since there's a V, we're going to see what we can extract out of this particular file. So we'll right click and we will use an option here called import vector PDF data. Since there's a V, we're going to use the import vector, and I can leave all the settings as they are, but we're going to pull in the vector data out of this so we don't have to go through and click, click, click and digitize that information. Let's see how much it will extract. So if we go through and take a look, we've extracted multiple lines out of this PDF. So there's lots of different data that we pulled in. The names are what would not make sense at the very beginning. When it extracts a vector PDF, it doesn't know that we want to call that existing or design or building. So it's just extracted it as these random layer names. Another basic tool that's in here that's very helpful, if I turn off my image, the georeference image in the background, I turn that off so I can kind of see my data on the screen. We can see it in two different colors. I'll try to toggle so you can see it different ways. A nice tool, whether you're working with CAD data or PDF data, if you're looking under the View Filter Manager here, there's a tool that I can zoom extents and isolate. And then I take my very first layer. So if you use the zoom and the isolate and you pick your layer, all you need on your keyboard is your down arrow. Your down arrow will let you see what the layer name is, whether it's CAD or extracted vector PDF data, and what's on that particular data. So we can see different layers have different information right there, and we need to extract those names that are called PDF, we need to extract those. That looks like the existing data that I would like to work with, and we need to put them on the layers that we want specifically. So we'll go through and look at all this data. The tools that we want, since Takeoff is focused on just PDF only and rastered only, what we want to move to is our data prep. The data prep gets into the CAD file functionality. So under the data prep, we have a tool called Standardize. So data prep and Standardize, what we're going to do is select data on our screen and tell it what layers we would like it to work on. The layers we would like it to work on would be our names, which include existing and design data. So I'm going to turn these two settings, layer filters, off. So nothing has been put on existing yet. Nothing has been put on design yet. We've turned off those two sets of layers. So with those two off, here's the data from the PDF. Let's go through now. You uncheck probably most of the times this uniquely named items. We probably don't need that, because what that would do, if you had 100 contours and you send over 100 contours, it's going to give them contour 1, contour 2, contour 3. Probably not needed for your average takeoff right here. So if we activate the selection box under Standardize, over here we're going to activate this. I'm going to select something on my screen. When I pick this, it picks everything on that particular layer that it extracted from the vector PDF data. So by doing that, it highlights this information. That data that's highlighted, I would like it to become existing contours. This is why it's so important to have a template with your ribbon and your layers already preset. So these layers are listed. I would like all of this data to be moved. You can call it relayer. We call it standardized to existing contours. They're immediately moved. So we'll click another one on the screen. This right here would be the design contours. And if I zoom in, I see a building pad right here. We'll click this building pad, and I want to put it on design building pad. That's all I need at this moment just to go through this exercise. So we'll turn everything off. We'll turn back on our image, and let's turn on the existing. So there's some things we may not want or need, and you can highlight that data. We can just use the delete button. But here's the data. So again, as I said in that original document, the name of the game is to turn your data from 2D to 3D. That's what we're trying to get to right here. So if I zoom in and take a look, every line, if we right click and check properties of this particular line, it doesn't have elevation. So we need to go through and elevate this information all the way across. So that exercise would be under data prep. We can change elevation, or we can set line elevation. I'm a bigger fan of the set line elevation. We want to click something on the screen. We take a look at it. This needs to be 3816.5. So I'm going to put in 3816.5. I hit my enter button. That has now been elevated. It is ready for another one. So if we come over to the next one and click it, this one should be 3817 even. Hit the enter button. You see that it is now activated and set at 3817. That's great, but we're going to run into a problem in about 30 seconds. And that is, we don't remember which ones we've elevated, which ones we haven't elevated. So it's great we've got this vector data. But the secret of this, really working with some of the view filters and the settings to make this process work, is under display options. We're under view filter manager. Under display options, you can take data with no elevation and show it in an alternate color. And you can pick any color, again, totally customizable. So if I want to pick red and show it in an alternate color, it will now show me all of my two-dimensional data, what does not have elevation. So most of this has not been elevated yet. So we would go through and I would pick this information right here. And again, what were the last commands I was using? Right here are my most recent commands. If you would like more than the few that are here, there's about 7 that are listed here. You do have an option for that under the support and the options. If you look down on your list here to the context menu, if I scroll down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's a context menu. You can crank this up to 20 right here. So you can show all of your recent commands when you right click and do that. But we'll go in, we're going to set line elevation. I'm going to pick this one. and it needs to be 3818. So we hit enter, and that one is now elevated. If I pick another line, this also needs to be 3818, but instead of typing it, if you have a known line that's already been elevated, just select it, and it automatically assigns that value. So now we've done that without clicking in two places. If we go over here and pick this one, this needs to be 3818.5, hit enter there. So we can now, with the red, start to quickly elevate our data. We'll go through and do this and take just a moment. And let me go through and elevate these few lines right here. We'll also be working in 3D view at the same time to manage this information. So we'll go through and elevate these. And if we're missing anything, here's one that's tucked in, which would be very hard to see from a board if you had to use the digitizer. For those that have done it many years, right there, 3817.5, enter that. This one is also 3817.5, so I can just select one and hit the other, and it will elevate that for me automatically. We'll go through and do a couple more. These are both 3816, so I just click one and get both of them selected. And most of this is selected right now. Here's a little one that we may have missed. Okay, so those have been selected. So by doing that, that is selecting now. Now let's work with our views and see how we can manage this data a little more, managing our existing. So you can open up another view. This is my 3D view, it's the cube. It allows you to rotate the data as well. If you press on the wheel and rotate it, you can also see multiple views at the same time. If I grab a tab, left click, grab it and drag it, it lets me see both views at the same time right here. So this is how we can see 2D and 3D data. I can look at it and I can highlight in 3D view. It highlights that information from my plan view. If I highlight the 2D data, it highlights that and it allows me a quick view of did I miss anything. And it looks like I've selected all the lines on my screen right here. So we've got these selected. So we'll go through and from 3D highlighting the data, I'll hit delete and we deleted that information. So now we just have a clean existing set of data on the screen. So this works the exact same way for CAD data. So both principles apply at the same time right here. So now we've got a clean set of existing contours on the screen. So with those, here's a couple of things that we can do. There's actually a tool now under Takeoff to use build surfaces. Traditionally, if you've used the software for a long time and you think of modeling applications, you would highlight my data, you would go into surfaces. Once you go into surfaces, you would say create a surface. You would go through a couple of steps to do that. But from a Takeoff and really focusing on Takeoff, you can use a tool called build surfaces. If I select build surfaces, it immediately creates that surface automatically. I did not have to select those lines or pick them. I just hit build surface. How does it know to do that? How does the software know to use these lines to create the surface? What you want to look under behind the scene, already set up in the template, is this categorize tool. The categorize tool says if I have drawn on these particular layers, if I have drawn on existing 2D lines, 3D lines, borehole, boundary, contour, if I've drawn on these layers, when I select build surface, it will automatically create that surface for me. If I put things on design, the same concept, if I put them on these design layers, when I hit build surface, it will create those for me automatically as well. So by looking at that, I can tell I probably need one more line over here, one more contour. So you can look at the information and say, okay, let's add one manually. Let's go through Takeoff and add a contour. We'll use 3816. This is just a judgment call. You would take a look and we would want to drop this number down. So here I can drop it down to 3816. I activate where I want to digitize it and I can just select one more spot. And now, instead of adding that as a surface member or anything, just use your build surface one more time. It now creates that information. It just lets us know we haven't put any boundaries. Now we have a complete existing surface right there. So that's done in much fewer steps just by elevating that data and putting that information in. So there's our existing. Let's use the exact same process for design. And there's a couple of tools on the design to talk about as we do this as well. So on the design, if we go through, there's a couple of new ways that I've tried to focus on this in the last several months of just working with TBC and some of the tools. So we'll go through and set the data prep. We'll set the line elevation. Here's a good example. This line should be a 3817. So if I start this line at the beginning and say it's 3817, it's going to only elevate a small piece of the line right here. Now, you can go through and select the next one and select that elevation. You can select the next one, you can select and tie that together. But you can also go through and use the project cleanup tools. The project cleanup tools will go through and let me manage a lot of this information, and it will join a lot of that data together for me automatically. So I'm a big fan of project cleanup. It makes it much, much quicker to go through and do this. So before we do this, what I'll do is I'll get rid of some data that we know we don't need. I'll turn off the design. Let's just turn back on the original extra information. I could leave it on here. I could set it to a different layer, but I'll just delete that information off my screen. And then we'll go to the design. We'll turn the design on. We're going to pick this data with my cursor and Windows select, and I'm going to go project cleanup. I'm going to use my current selection, and I'm going to join small gaps right here and set this at a 0.1, and we'll apply that. So let's go through and use project cleanup. It's a huge tool for any kind of takeoff work. To remove duplicate lines is really a huge part of this from CAD data, to remove that and to join things. So if we look through this, it found 2 duplicate lines. You almost can't find those manually. Very hard to do that. It filtered out a lot of extra nodes, vertices if we don't need that, and we joined 87 lines automatically. So the cleanup tool is huge in this process, but it may not be perfect. Here's another example where this line did not join. So one of the newer techniques that I've started using is I'll start at the very beginning of the line and I right click and I'll just do join. If your first section is elevated, if your first section is already elevated, what you can automatically do is, if you see on the screen, it's making this bold, it is automatically joining those together right there. And because they're all red, here's what's nice about these tools is I can go in here and change the red to a different color. Maybe in this particular case, we'll look at some options and we'll make it a cyan for just a moment. That way we can kind of see between the two what we're doing, and we can continue to join. So if I do this, we're going to take the very first one that we've created. I would like to join it here. And if your first one is elevated, all the rest will automatically be elevated as well. So let's show this and change my color palette again. I'm going to show this as a different color. So we'll set it right there so I can see what is 2D versus 3D. And let's use that same process again right here. This line should be 3817.5. So what I'm going to do is pick the beginning of the line. And I want it to be, let's go through and set line elevation, pick the beginning of the line, 3817.5, enter. And the beginning of the line is now elevated, 3817.5. But again, I'm going to now use the tools to click this, and instead of using that, I'm going to go in and join. And we'll take our first one, and we'll just join these broken pieces together. And again, it elevates as it goes. So it's a much cleaner process and faster process to do the first one and then just use the join command. And not only does it join it, but it will elevate it at the same time. So you've got a couple of different tools on how you want to manage your data and work with it. So here we'll right click and we'll set line elevation, and we'll pick a few of these. So I'll pick the line that I would like to use, 3818. And again, you've got a mixed bag of tools that you can use if I just want to elevate it that way. Let's go to this building pad. If I pick the building pad it needs to be a 3818.5. We put that information in, and we can quickly do the rest of these. Another tool, if you've not used it before, is also contours by crossing. Contours by crossing, as long as I have two known elevations, so here we've got a 3817.5, here we have a 3817. These are higher and lower. What you can do is strike a line across as long as you have two, and it will elevate the others for you automatically. So we can go through and do this area for the pond right here. So if I come in and first use my set line elevation, let me select one of these and go 3814.5. Let me select the next one and say 3815. So now I've elevated two lines. So instead of going through and clicking them all, we can right click and we can use the crossing and just strike a line across, and it will elevate all the associated lines. We train it to elevate our data. So if we back up and take a look, we've got most of these done. There's a few more we may need to come in here and do. Here's a small one down here. This is the same pattern, so we can strike a line across and elevate that one automatically. And there's two more up here that we'll quickly do. I'll come up here and elevate this one using the set line elevation. And this one is 3818. So you can see very quickly, if there's one we don't know what it is, we just track it back down. This is also 3818. So we've got that in. So we can back up and take a look, and we see that we've elevated most all of these lines. If we missed one, again, same process. We can click and click another spot, and it looks like most of our lines are elevated. Now the pad elevated at a different color. The others elevated a dark blue. This elevated as a red. You may wonder why I did that. That's because this was on a different layer. We put this on design buildings. Because we put it on design buildings, it will go through and work with its layer. And we can see on this list right here that design buildings is red. So by seeing that it's red, it automatically puts that information in. Now the other data is 2D, and we may want to separate out that data. So let's see how quickly I can come through. And this data also at the moment, if you right click and check properties, you see that it's on design contours. We need to move it. We need to move this layer. So I'm going to use my control key, and I'm going to select this curve, and I would like to move it from the layer it's on to seeing if we've got it all. There. I want to move that from design contours to design curve, and it immediately moved it to a different layer. That allows me now to use it as some subgrade information if I would like. Here's one that I missed. Let's set this line elevation right here, and let me use this small line and attach it to that. Okay, so now if we take a look and back up, let's go to our 3D view at the same time. We can turn and we can see what we've elevated. We can split our screen in half. We can see this information. We can now highlight this, and we can see we've got our design information all elevated, and we have also that curve that we want to use for other things. But since we put it on a different layer, how can we start to manage this data from 2D and 3D? This is where it's very powerful to have both at the same time. We can turn that curve off and not see it, and we can delete from 3D view, and so we'll turn it back on, and now we've got all the data that we want to do our site with. So what we do from an average site, first we're going to need to put a boundary in. So that's very typical in the workflow. Let's go through now and let's put a design boundary around this job. You can use a couple of tools. You can use the shrink wrap option, is very popular. You can also sketch one out if you had a line here for silt fence and other information. So we'll go to CAD and I'll draw a polyline, and let's put it on a layer called design boundaries. So we'll come up here and pick design boundaries already in our template, ready to go. And I can sketch out a line. So we'll just sketch out where we would want the limits of disturbance, where we would have a silt fence. We would put this in. Any of this can also be moved or edited using the CAD grips. We'll sketch this out right here, and we'll close that information. There we go. So we've now put a boundary around here. So with the boundary in here, what can we do now? We'll use that same tool called build surfaces. If we go back and use build surfaces, it automatically will build that information for us. We can now turn on and take a peek at what these surfaces look like. And there are our surfaces that we have built for this job site. There's a step that you probably want to do in this workflow right here. And let's turn on just one surface at a time and turn on the finished surface so you can see that particular information. One tool that you've got that you can do is you can take this boundary and you would like to elevate it. That's very handy to elevate. That way we daylight our information out. So to do that, under data prep, you can change the elevation of your boundary. We would change that elevation of that one line to the surface elevation of the original ground. That way, when we go through and we build our surface, we now have an exact edge. And what we're left with now is putting in our subgrade information. So putting in the subgrade gets us that actual volume quantity that we need for takeoffs right there. How do we go through that exercise? Well, we'll turn off the surfaces for just a minute, and we use identify site region right here. There's an identify site region under takeoff. We pick design. It highlights the areas automatically that we can put our subgrade in. So the reason these highlight is they are associated already and categorized under design. These are the layers we use for design right here, and there's a green checkbox. The green checkbox is what we can use to put in subgrade information. So that means if we've drawn anything on a design boundary, if we've drawn on design curb, if we've drawn on design buildings, those are layers that we can use for our subgrade information. So we'll go through and identify this, and we'll pick design. What layer would we like to put this on? We've got a layer called Site Validate Region already set up. Now we pick our depths. So what depths would we like to put in? So I could put in a 9-inch, and we'll call it paving. And when you click in an area, it will highlight that automatically for us. So that just put a 9-inch subgrade area in there. We can go through and maybe we would like a 16-inch pad. Put a pad in, and it's located right here. And then maybe we want to add a 24-inch, and we want to call it heavy-duty paving. And where would we like it located? We put it right here. So it will highlight for us what we put in for our subgrade information. That allows us quickly now to go build surfaces, and you'll see in 3D view that we've now created that subgrade information. So not only do we have existing and design, we now have our subgrade associated with the job site. We could also enter our stripping information as well. So all of that can be put in. From here, we could calculate our volume. So we would take our site and we'll go through and we could quickly run a earthwork summary off this, original ground to our subgrade adjusted. I did not put strata in this particular example right here, and we could say apply, and it will generate us our quantities associated with this job site. So here it will generate, and we'll be able to see a report that shows how much cut and fill is associated with this, and we get to see the names associated with this. So right here, we made a paving area that gives us a cut fill. We made a pad that's all fill. We made a heavy duty paving, and the remaining areas, the areas that I do not classify, gives us a total cut and fill associated. Not only do we get our cut fill, we also get the depth of our materials and subgrades and our quantities there. So we get a very quick earthwork summary. The last part of this is we would go through now and we could generate a cut fill map. If we needed to on this job site, we would name it cut fill, subgrade versus existing. You can pick anything that you would like. What are our surfaces? We have our original ground and we have the subgrade right here. We can pick a layer for this, already set up in the template. Here's a site cut fill, and we can pick a text type. We could pick a grid spacing. Here we'll go, let's go 50 feet on this and generate a cut fill map, giving us our final cut fill on this. A little extra tool that you've got access to as well. You get a strong cut fill map right here, but you can actually go in and change some of these settings if you would like. And there are tools in a cut fill map. Once you generate it, you get a color mapping option. The color mapping option lets you go through and control how I would like to do this. So if I want to delete some of these to get a more universal color palette, you can see that information. You can change your screen and get the strong cuts and fills associated with a job site right there, where we're cutting, where we're filling. We see our deepest cut, our deepest fills, or our highest fills, and we get this information. So that's a super quick overview right there of really going from A to Z, pulling this in. I'm going to take about 5 more minutes. I know to the top of the hour there'll be questions. I'm going to show you what happens if you get a CAD file. We won't go through this entire piece of it, but there's a couple more things to show in about 5 more minutes to let you see that exercise. So what we'll do is we'll do one more file, and I didn't even save this one, but that's okay. We'll do file new, and I'm going to use the same template. And if we get CAD data, how do we make all this work together right here? So we're going to start from an empty screen, and we'll go through and let's pull in some CAD data. Here's a project. I'm going to pull in 2 DWG files. So right here, we're just dragging in 2 DWGs. Let's see what it looks like once we pull these in. It's going to pull in this data, and at the very beginning, you may import this data, and sometimes you may not see everything on your screen immediately. And what you realize is the data that you want may be in one spot, because you may have some data far, far away in another location. How do you work with this, and how do you manage this data? Well, an easy way to do it is highlight the data that you want. If you highlight the data that you want, there is a tool that you can go through that lets you invert your selection. So if we invert, it gets anything else in this CAD file, no matter how far away it is. We selected what we wanted. We're using the invert and deleting all the other information. So now we're down to the data that we would like. Now we're going to go through and show you that standardize again very quickly. Let's go through and standardize this information. We activate the box. We turn off the existing and the design, the data that we haven't created yet. We want to activate, and I zoom in and I see the data that would make up existing contours. I'm going to select the existing, and I'm going to move those to the existing contours. There's the index ones. We're going to move those to existing contours as well. Then we would look through our data and find the data that we want for a site. What information do we need in here? And tuck deeply in this file right here, there are some data that we want. Here are our contours. If we want those, so we're going to send those to our design contours. If we have others, we pick those as well, and we pick that data. We send those to design contours as well. And if we have any other information, we're going to go pick a building pad. We're going to send that to design building. And then if we have a curve, we'll go through here, and I will take this curve right here, and I will also select the curve, and we will send it to design curve. From that, we're going to turn off all the data associated with this and just look at the design. So this is the data that we saved from the design right here and what you can look at it. Now, I'm going to take this particular information right here and get rid of it so we can kind of see our site a little cleaner and how it's looking. If there's things that we missed, we may want to go back and track that information down. So what I missed is I need these edges right here. I need some perimeters to work with. So I'm going to select on my screen, I'm going to go through and pick this fence line, and I'm going to send it to my design 3D line. I'm going to pick one more right here, this fence. I'll send it over as well. Now we'll turn everything off but that. So now we've got the design data that we would want to work with on a job site. So where would we go from here? The one other thing that I want to take a moment to show is now that you've got CAD data, you may also have the PDF data associated as well, and how do you merge all that together? So the workflow is, in this particular case, we've got this data, but we also have a PDF file. So right here is this PDF. Now, if I drag this PDF on the screen, I move my data over, I drag the PDF in, it doesn't know where it needs to go at the beginning. It doesn't know its location, its orientation, or anything else. So you've got the ability to go through and geo-reference this data. By doing this, you can pick an image point. Here, I'll pick the corner of where this fence is located, and it should be actually located right at this corner, and we can add another point. So we'll come in and take a look, and we see there's a building out here and an edge that we want to work with. So we can come back over here and take a look. Here's this boundary right here. I'll use this corner, and it should be located right here. So we can see that, and we can compute and tie together our PDF and our CAD data. So first we start with our CAD data. We work with it first, and then we bring in our PDF data afterwards. We tie it together. Once we've done that, now you see that you can work with your data. You see a lot of the data is already 3D, so we will have 3D data to work with. We can also see the existing data. We would go through the same process now of putting in our subgrades and coming up with our quantities. The last thing to show that also exists within Business Center that you've got access to is at the very bottom right of Business Center, you see there's a default down here. If you click that default, that is your grid options and your settings and some of your different coordinate systems available. You can actually click the default as it's working off a CAD file. I can change, and I can go through and pick a coordinate system and zone. Depending on where you're located in the world, you pick a coordinate system, and this is a NAD 83 New York East. You would pick what coordinate system zone that you're working with, and once that is set, now you have the ability in the background to turn on your mapping options as well. So at the bottom, there's a mapping choice. You can see that we turn that on in the background. We can see where this data is located, and you can change different maps. One of those is a satellite image, and now you can see where your data is in the real world as you're working to generate your cut fill maps, your locations, and all your other data. So we would go from here to finish elevating the data to 3D. We would then turn around and put in our subgrade information and run our volumes and our cut fill data just like we did on the previous job. So I'll pause right there. I know that's a great deal of information, but one note to kind of leave at the end, if we go back through everything we just did is really still based on these steps right here. So if we look at all that information, all we did in all three scenarios is import data. Once we've imported that data, we elevated the existing data. We either digitized it, we extracted it from a vector, and we elevated it. We did the same for design. We did the design data. We elevated that information. Then we put in our subgrades. After we had our subgrade information, we ran our volume calculations, and we generated those reports. The secret sauce of all of that is starting from templates and ribbons, so your layers are preset and you're ready to go. Thank you for your valuable time. Albert, I'll pause right there, and if there's more to add or comments, feel free to go from there. A lot of data, but I hope that's beneficial for those that are new and realize the power of what you can do in Business Center for doing earthwork takeoffs.
Thanks so much, Scott. It seems like you did such a good job. You only have one question to answer. So well done on that. The only question we got was just how to and how would you do two surfaces and then just do a volume calc between the two surfaces, which I think is a simple enough question to answer, because surfaces, if you go to the surfaces tab there, Scott,
right.
You'll see there's create surface over there on the left. So if you have existing data that you would like to create a surface from, the same as Scott did with building surfaces. You can do it using that. You will create 2 separate surfaces, and then under your Project Explorer, so Scott, if you can just go to Project Explorer, under surfaces, we don't have anything at the moment, but there you will have the 2 different surfaces. If you then go to the earthworks report, you will then be able to select those 2 surfaces. And you select the 2 surfaces, you calculate it, and that will give you the difference between those 2, and you will get a cut for. More or less the same what Scott did when he did this earthworks report. That is just the easy way to do it. If you only have a design and an original surface or data and you want to create 2 surfaces, just do it that way, or you can do it through the whole takeoff and data prep way is another way of doing it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Albert. Yep, you would just create a surface for surface A versus surface B. You would go in here and name this. This would just be, you could call this design info, and that highlighted data would become a surface right there, and you would see that particular information has become a surface. You could take existing contours, scan data, point clouds, you would create another surface, and then you would just compare volumes between surface A and surface B, and you can have multiple surfaces as you've created. I know that there's a levee project one of the customers I was working with was on, and they surveyed it monthly over years, and they had 100 surfaces, and you can compare volumes between any surface A to any surface B. Absolutely.
Thanks, Scott. See, Matt just asked, how did the pavement lines get their elevation on the PDF import that you did?
I'm sorry, how did which lines get elevated?
The paving lines when you wanted to do that?
Actually, because we did not assign an elevation of those lines, we were working just off the contour information. You can go in there and elevate each line as a line string if you like, but since they were on their own layer, if we go back and look under takeoff and categorize, if we go back and look at this option, what we get the ability to do, it's running a command right there for me. If we go back and look right here, we had put those edge lines, we had put the paving lines on design curb. Since we put those paving lines on design curb, they were available to use as a subgrade. There's a green checkbox by that. So even though they did not have elevation, they have a green checkbox on that layer called design curve. Therefore, we can use that to build our subgrade information, our site regions out of that, which is very powerful. So if you have a lot of contours, you don't have to go through and elevate that from a takeoff standpoint if you don't want to, unless you want that added densification of elevations right there. So just having them allows the subgrade. It used all the design information to extract the subgrade based on those boundaries.
Great. Thanks so much, Scott. If you can show me the slideshow again quickly. I see we have the common question again on where can we find these recordings. So if Scott goes to that resources, PDF resources one, slide number 7.
Let's see here.
One more. There we go. There you can see nicely highlighted there under the support tab in TBC. You will see a power hour button. If you click on that, all the power hours we've done since I think the 2016 will be available there. This power hour will probably be up there by end of the week, beginning next week. If you signed up for this, you will get an email notification that it has been uploaded. So you can at any stage go back and view any of the power hours by simply using that power hour button. Anything else on quickly? Somebody's asking for that 2025 construction template. I'm sure you can reach out to Scott. So if you want to just reach out to Scott, it's scott_bridges@trimble.com. He will be able to send you those templates. He's very happy to share that with you guys. So please do reach out to Scott if you need any of this information. He'll gladly help you out with that. I see we do have a question or a suggestion that we do some more power hours on additional construction stakeout quantities like utilities, we'll definitely take that under advisement. We are gearing up for the 2025.10 release, so we'll definitely make sure we get some more power hours going on these kind of topics going forward. Scott, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Always great seeing all the basic stuff that you bring up. It's really great. Thank you everyone for joining us for this power hour. We appreciate the time you set aside for this. We'll definitely see you guys for the next one, end of June. Scott, have a great day. Everyone, have a good morning, afternoon, or evening where you might be, and appreciate the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you all.